Hey everyone. Right, sorry I'm a bit late. I was on a Twitter space, but I'm really looking forward to this session. We're going to add some IK, inverse kinematics, and we're also going to animate our character. So our character is going to be walking around. We'll add a walk and an idle animation, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get into it. Okay, right. We have our character here. Let's just sort of do a recap of where we are at. So if I hit play now, we got our character. We can move left and right, up and down, but sadly she just glides around, and we're going to fix that today, and we're going to animate her. But to make our animation easier to do, we're going to add some IK. So if we click on our character and we click on add component, we can type in IK, and we only have two options here, and it's this top one here, IK Manager 2D, that we want to choose. So let's click on that, and we have our list of IK solvers, and we don't have any yet, so let's click on this plus here, and we want to choose limb. So the bottom in the list here is called limb, and that's the most sensible to choose for a basic limb. So we've got our limb solver here, and where should we start? Let's start on our legs. So we'll start on our leg front, and we want to click on our leg front lower here, and we can right click, choose create empty, and then we want to move this, so let's press W so that we get this gizmo here, and let's move this all the way down to the bottom of our foot here. So just drag down on the red arrow, and this is going to be what they call the effector. It will get dropped in here. So let's rename this leg underscore F underscore E for effector, like that. And while we're at it, let's rename this to leg underscore F underscore solver, because this is our solver. And then we take our effector and we drag and drop it into the effector slot here, like that. And then we click on this create target button here, and this has created this target and put it in here, so we can click on that to highlight it. That's actually there, and this is the magic that you're going to see. Look, how cool is that? We get this kind of somewhat natural movement, and the key here is that it's affecting both these bones simultaneously and bending at the knee somewhat naturally, and that's kind of what we want. Now we probably want to have our targets all together, and let's rename this to underscore T for target, and let's tidy things up a bit. So if I click on character, right click, choose empty, and I'm going to call this targets, and then I'm going to drag this in here. So we just keep all our targets together, because these are the things, it's the targets that we're going to want to animate, so they're kind of key. And then just to keep our solvers all tucked away, because once we set up our solvers we don't really care about them that much, we can do a create empty and call this solvers. And let's stick this drag and drop here, stick it above our targets and drag our leg solver in there. Then we're just keeping things tidy. We can kind of close that and forget about our solvers. Once we've set them all up, we've still got a bit more to do now. So, and just double check that our target's still working. Yeah, that still works. It's quite happy to be moved around. So that's great. Okay, let's do our back leg now. So exactly the same, we have to do this 3 more times, exactly the same process. So we right click, we do choose empty, create empty, we drag down to the bottom of the foot like that, we rename to leg underscore back underscore effector, like so. Then we come up to our character and we want to create another solver, so we hit this plus button here, another limb one, that recreates our solver. We can drag it in here if we want, and let's call this leg underscore back underscore solver. And then we take our effector and drag and drop it in here. We hit this create target button, which creates our target in here, and then we rename this to underscore T for target, and then we drag it in here, and then we test it. Yeah, right, cool. So we have another leg working. And now we just need to do our arms. So we come down to our front arm, exactly the same idea. Let's bring it down a bit. Right click, create empty, pull this down to the end of the bone about here, rename to arm underscore F underscore E for effector, like so. Come back up to our character, create ourselves another solver for our arm, drag in our effector in here, click on our create target, click on this. Now if we'd have renamed this earlier it would have been a bit neater, but there you go. So this is arm underscore front underscore solver, right? And this is arm underscore front underscore target. We drag our target into here, we drag our solver into here, our solver's all hooked up, yeah. And let's grab our hand and see what that looks like. Ooh, ouch. That's a little bit nasty. Easy to solve. So what we do is we come to our solver and we do a flip. So we click flip. And now when we click on our target, it's flipped our joint to be the right way around. So that's cool. I'm just doing Control Z if I move them around just to keep things simple. Right, one more to do and then I promise you we are done. So there, drag down to the bottom there, rename it to arm underscore back underscore effector, Click on our character, click on our IK Manager to create a new limb. I'm gonna guess that we want to flip it, so let's just flip it anyway. Let's come to our solver and we're calling this arm underscore back underscore solver, like so. We are dragging in our back effector into here. We're clicking create target. We're dragging our, let's expand this, our target, after we've renamed it, in with all our other targets, and our solver in with all our solvers. Now we can close this up, forget about our solvers, because hopefully that flip did the right thing. Yeah, there you go. It would have been another backwards elbow if we hadn't flipped it. Cool. Let's save. And now we have IK'd our rig. And that is going to make life a lot easier when we come to animating. Okay, let's zoom our camera in a bit, a little bit zoomed out. I'll have a better view of our character. Right, animation. Okay, so make sure the character is highlighted, and then we want to go window, animation, animation. And might be easier to dock this. I feel we can dock it next to the game window. If you've got a bit more space on your screen, you might want it floating around, but that works for me, seeing as I don't have much space. And then we can click on this create button here to begin animating character, create an animator and animation clip, and our button here will do that for us. And let's put our animations all in an animations folder. We're very nice and organized in this project, which is always a good thing. And let's do our idle first. So idle, and click save. Right, how do we want to do our idle? Well, I think we want to move our chest up and down as if we're kind of breathing. I think that will do the trick. And I think we kind of want our hands a little bit more natural than this. So let's do our hands first. So let's do our front one first. Well, let's do our back one first, maybe. And let's just get it into position. So we probably just want to be like down by our side, something like that. A little bit of a bend in our arm. And do the same for our front arm, just kind of like that. Now we want to save that position, so what we can do is make sure you're at 0 here. That's the start of our animation. We click this record button, and then we just want to save the position of these two transforms. So we can shift click, so we select both of them, and then we can right click position and do add key. Simple as that. And then we probably want actually I think that's probably enough actually, because we're not going to change that position. That's just going to sit there. But what we will change is, I think our chest position, let's just try that. So if we kind of do that, yeah, that kind of works. So I just undid that, and let's just this can be our rest, this can be our first position. So we've got this clicked already, so we can just highlight chest, right click position, add key, and then we can copy that. So what you want to do is click on this like diamond here, goes blue, Control C or Command C if you're on a Mac, come along here and paste. So it will start and stop at the same position, and then halfway we want to kind of move our chest down. So make sure chest is highlighted, we've got this red, and let's just bring ourselves down a bit. Is that enough? Well, I think it is enough, because we just want it to be a subtle idle. You can play around if you want a more sort of heavy idle, that's fine. It's really up to you. But I just feel it's a little bit fast, it's a little bit like you're out of breath. So let's drag this to say 2 seconds instead, and this to 1 second. And this top one here selects all of them, right? So if there was even more dots down here, it would select them all. So it's, if you want to select all of them, you click and drag the top dot. And let's just see. Maybe a little bit too subtle, maybe a bit further down. So make sure we're over this middle one and just move it. It'll overwrite it if we're just in exactly the right place. Let's try that. Ooh, that's maybe a bit too bit too far. You can spend hours messing around with animations. I think that's probably right. Yeah, I think that's good. And if you want, you could add a little bit of a head nod to emphasize it a little bit. That might be nice. Let's see how that goes. So I've selected the head bone here, and let's just zoom out a bit. And then I can right click on rotation, because it's the rotation this time that we're doing, not the position, and then add key. Again, we want to start and stop with that same rotation, so we'll copy that, Control C, come all the way along here, and Control V there, and then maybe in the middle here we'll just maybe bow our head a little bit. Yeah, that kind of looks nice, doesn't it? Adds a little bit more movement to it. Nice. I think that'll do for our idle. Like I say, you can spend hours just tweaking this and playing around, but that'll do for to kind of give you the basics of how you animate something like that. If you want to see it in the game view, which might be nice, so you can get all these bones out of the way, you can just hit play, and you should be able to see it in the game. Yeah, it's very subtle, just that little bit of movement. You can emphasize it a bit more if you want, but I think that'll do for us. Cool. Right, so we've got our idle. Let's move on to our walk animation next. So let's click on here and do create new clip. So click on that. Make sure you put it away in animations. So here's our idle one, and we can just do walk now and click save. And now we've got our walk going on. Right. Now then, what we kind of want to do is use this grid as our ground, yeah, so that we kind of know where our feet should be placed. So make sure we're not recording any animations or anything, and I just want to move our character just so that we're standing on a grid line, which kind of will make our lives a little bit easier. So there you go, we're kind of on the ground now, which will give us an idea of where we're at. Right, we're going to do our feet like this. So we'll start with our largest stride. Yeah, like that. But you see, you know, if our legs full stretch like that, kind of off the ground a bit. So we do want to pull ourselves down, and that will be our root that we want to do that with. So let's try that. There you go. So that's probably good. So record. We want let's do our arms as well. So if our front leg is back, our front arm should be forwards. So let's do that, and our back arm should definitely be back then. So kind of like that. I think that'll do. Maybe a bit up like that. Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah. Okay, and front arm, I don't know if it's, yeah, something like that. That's better, I think. Okay, so we want to record all of these and our root. So control click our root as well. And that's all positions. So we can right click and add key. And we want to end up like this. So copy that and paste that at 1. So halfway we want the opposite, right? So we want our front leg forward, and our back leg back, like that. Something like that. And swap our arms as well. So that front arm wants to come back like that. And our back arm wants to go forwards, like something like that. Not too crazy. And we want, let's just make sure we moved all these so they're actually all written out, because we've got on record, but we haven't written out our root again. So let's just write out our root like so. There you go. So it kind of works, yeah, but it's not quite got exactly what we're looking for. And if you want to look at it in the game, let's just turn record off for a second. Unfortunately, if we hit play now, let me just save the scene. If we hit play now, we're in idle, and actually we can see that because we didn't save our leg position, our idle is not exactly what we want. So we need to go back. Let's just fix that first. We need to go back to our idle and put our legs in the idle position, right? Because if you don't record, then it will just leave it where they kind of last were, which is not what we want. So let's click on record. Let's just click there like that, and we're actually going to need to move the root up a bit as well, I think. So let's move this up a little bit so we're on the floor. I think that should do. Yeah, so we've got our idle there, and then if we switch to our walk, switch to our idle, I think that's better. Let's go back to our game, hit play. Cool. So how do we show our walk animation? Well, what we need is we need to get up our controller, and when we created the animation by clicking that create button, it actually created a controller for us, and it stuck it in the animator in this controller thing here. So we can literally just double click that and it will bring up the controller here. And so this is where we control our different animation states. So when we enter, it defaults to idle. Now if we want to just quickly show our walk, we can just simply right click walk and we can do set as layer default, and then this arrow will point to here. We can hit play. And there you go, we're walking. So that walk is not the most natural walk in the world, so let's fix that. And why is that? Well, make sure we click on character. Well, we have a bounce in our step when we walk, right? It's perhaps not obvious, but you'll see it makes all the difference in the world when we do it. So what we want to do is when we're at our largest stride, we're kind of at our lowest, and we're also on our stride here the other way, so we're still low there as well. But somewhere in between here we should be higher. So we should raise our root at this point. So let's hit record and let's just raise ourselves a bit like so. And let's just copy that and paste that halfway in between these two here as well. And let's see what that looks like. See, immediately we're looking a little bit better. And we're kind of locking out on our legs here, so which would suggest that we probably want our root to be a little bit lower on our strides. So let's do that. Let's record. Let's make sure root is highlighted, and maybe we can bring ourselves down a little tiny bit here so we're not quite locking out. It's quite tricky to get quite right. That may be too much. Let's see. So let's copy that. And of course we're raising our root, and then we're bringing it back down, and here it should be lower, so we can paste that lower root in, and then we're back up again, and we can paste our root in there as well. Does that look better? Yeah, I think it does actually. Let's click back on play on our game, click play. Yeah, that's pretty good. So that's looking a lot better. And the only other thing really that I want to get right here is when we're walking, we lean forward a bit as well. So let's switch back to walk. And we just want to be leaning forwards the whole time really. So again, we can hit record. We can select our chest this time, and let's move our rotation here. It's a little bit easier, and we want to be just kind of forward a tiny bit. I think that's probably enough. Let's click back here. I think that's going to be pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, somehow we look a little bit more determined now. We look like we're going places. Cool. I think that's enough on the walk and idle animations. Again, I'm not the world's best animator, so this is something that you can spend hours and hours improving, and yeah, quite a lot of fun actually. So but we will move on, and let's integrate this into our movement. So we do want to default to idle when we come in to our scene, so let's set our default state back to here, but we do want to transition to walk and back to idle depending on whether we're moving or not. And there's various ways you can do this. The most flexible is to add a speed, I think. We probably won't use this speed fully. There's ways where you can hook it up to the animation speed, all this sort of stuff. Probably won't bother with that, but at least that gives you the flexibility to do that if you want to do that. I've definitely seen booleans used here as well, where you just switch from walking to still using a boolean. That kind of works as well. But let's use a speed float here, and then we can say make a transition to here. So if you missed that, sorry, right click idle, make transition, and I'll do the one back and you'll see what happens. You right click walk, make transition, and then you get this kind of arrow thing, and then you just click where you want the transition to go. So we've got a transition from idle to walk, walk back to idle, right? And so if I click on idle on this transition here, idle to walk, we can set a condition for why it decides to do that transition from idle to walk. Well, it makes sense that speed is greater than, and usually it's not good to have 0 in here. I think something like 0.1 should do the trick, I think. And so when speed is greater than 0.1, we're going to do a transition from idle to walk. Sometimes these numbers need a little bit of tweaking, but I think for our purposes, I think this will be fairly straightforward. And then coming back from walk to idle, we'll do the opposite. So when speed is less than 0.1, and we will transition from walk to idle, i.e. when we're stopping, we want to go back to our idle, right? Now the defaults on here are not ideal. but I'll leave them on there so you kind of see what that means, and then we'll fix those. But now I'm afraid to say we need to get into our script. So I know you've been missing scripting, so let's do that. But don't worry, it's only a few lines, so nothing too onerous. We need to get out our animator because this is what I can show you. I can show you it manually how this works, and then it kind of makes sense then when you do it in code, right? So if I hit play now, we're going in.
Wow, this is pretty cool, Morgan.
Yeah. I'm almost almost finished actually. Another 10 minutes and I think we're done. So when you come in here, it will default to idle, and I just want to show that this speed here, if we change this to 1, there you go, we start walking. And if we change it back to 0, we stop. So this is what we want to do in code, right? We want to get at this animator. You can see this is the animator here. We want to get at the speed inside the animator, and we want to change it from 0 to 1 and back to transition between walking and idle. So I hope that probably makes a little bit more sense by showing you that, and we'll go through that. So we need to get at our animator, and we know that our animator is on our character, right? It's a component on our character, and we can get at components within our scripts nice and easy if that's the case, because we can just do well, I tell you what, we're getting this component rigid body 2D, right? Which is, and as you can probably imagine, we want to do the same with our animator. We'll do a get component animator and do exactly the same thing. But we really want to do a little bit of an optimization here, seeing as we're looking at this now. And that is that we want to kind of hold our component when we start up, so that we can get at it a little bit quicker than having to do a get component every update, because that can be a little bit not particularly slow, but it's unoptimized. So let's fix that now. So we'll do a get rigid body, and we'll call this underscore rigid body 2D, and then in our awake, awake is something that happens like before anything else on a game object, so it's a real good safe place to set these things up. We'll assign our rigid body 2D to our get component. So we've basically done this bit here, and stuck it in a variable. And so we can, wherever we're using this bit of code, we can replace it with our variable, of course, right? So let's just paste that in there. And now we're nicely optimized, yeah? So, phew, good. And we'll do the same with our animator, right? So be careful here. It's an easy one to make, to say animation instead of animator, but we want to go down to animator, right? And we'll do a underscore animator, and we'll do a similar thing here. On awake, we will assign underscore animator to our animator component, right? So that's cool. Now, where are we gonna get our speed from that we want to kind of shove in our speed on our animator? Well, this gets called every time we change speed, right? Every time we press an arrow key or something, we're changing this move vector, which will affect the speed of our character, what we're doing. So this is ideal, right? So this is exactly what we can do. We can do underscore animator dot set float we know we set up our float to be called speed. I'll remind you of that in a second. And then we can use the magnitude of our vector. And this is going to be 1 when we're telling our character to move, and it's going to be 0 when we stop. So this is kind of perfect, really. Let's have a look. So let's just remind ourselves what we did. This is the float that we're talking about. Remember, we did added a parameter here called float, and this is what we're getting at in that script. And let's see what happens. So if we hit play, keep our fingers crossed, and we start moving, and eventually we switch. Yeah, and actually you can see up here that it immediately goes to 1, but we have this delay, right? So it's good to actually have this open, because you can kind of check your sanity. I mean, am I changing speed quickly to 1? Yeah, you are. We're doing the moonwalk backwards there. So what's going on here? Well, this is kind of what I was talking about when I said that our transitions, our defaults are wrong, right? If I look at our settings here, first of all, we don't want an exit time, and also we kind of want this to be probably a lot shorter than this. Let's get rid of everything, right, and just make a snap change from idle to walk. So if you get rid of exit time, meaning the animation will just finish, right? And we have this duration of 0, right? So we're just flicking from idle to walk like immediately. And let's do it for the transition back. So we'll do exactly the same here as well. So do that, and let's just see. That's the kind of the exact opposite of what we just had, right? Let's just see what that looks like. So we start walking, wow, bang, yeah, bang, and then we stop walking, immediate stop, right? So that, I'm actually okay kind of with stopping immediately like that. I don't actually care too much about that, but starting and kind of going crazy into there, maybe, I think in some circumstances that would be absolutely fine, but I kind of feel I want a little bit of a transition there. So let's tweak and see if we can find a number that works. I'll just set it by seconds, so switching this to fixed duration and changing this will be in seconds. So if I just put 0.1, say, that kind of looked pretty good. So let's try 0.2. Yeah, no, I didn't like that. Okay, so I think 0.1 is where we're at for that. And actually I think it keeps our settings even when we're in play mode. So that's good. Let's try that again. And the problem we do have now is we got a little bit of a moonwalk going on. We kind of want to be looking in the direction always that we're moving, right? So we don't want to do the moonwalk like that. So let's fix that, and then I think we will call it a night. So we're pretty close. Click on character, move 2D, and we'll keep a, well, let me just show you what we're going to do, right? Again, now you'd think maybe you want to do rotation, but actually I find that scale kind of works better, and we want to do this. No, that looks horrendous. That looks horrendous. What on earth's going on? Oh, wait a sec. And if we hit play, hopefully it's not going to crash on me. Oof, I thought that was a crash then. There you go. You see, we're looking in the opposite direction and that works fine. Okay. So let's get that done in code. So we come here, we go private bool underscore flipped, and again we only ever change this stuff in this move method, so this is a good place to do it, right? And let's do it here. We can do if and this is kind of tempting code that I'm getting prompted with here. It's almost right actually, so let's do that, but we don't want this rotate, so let's get rid of the rotate. Kill that, and then what we can do is exactly that. So when flipped is true, we set the x, as you saw, that's what we did. We set the x to -1, otherwise we're facing the normal way right, and it's set to 1. May not have come across this before. This is kind of like a weird if statement in a way. If this is true, we return this first number. If it's false, we return the second number. So that's exactly what we want, right? So if it's true, we return -1. X is going to be -1 because vector 3, this whole thing here is x essentially. Otherwise x is 1. Now you might wonder why this code is so complicated. You might think, well, we could probably just do flipped is equal to this, because this means we're going left, right? So, and we only want to be flipped when we're going left. Well, that's kind of right, but what that would mean is that as soon as we stopped, we'd flip to looking right again, and that's kind of doesn't feel right. You want to, when you stop, you want to just carry on looking in the direction you were looking in, and so this code here manages to do that. Let's test it out. Well, that's pretty perfect. Perhaps the walk animation could be tweaked a bit. I might just tweak it for the project later. I'm sure you can have a little bit of a play around with it and get it a bit better. But I think this stream has gone on long enough, and so I think I'm going to call it a night. That's pretty cool, huh? We have our character walking around and ready for our next video, where we're gonna give this poor girl a dagger, and she's gonna be all stabby with it, which is gonna be pretty exciting. Cool. Thanks everyone.